was great to.
I hope you followed the instructions though,
Yeah,
and you have a beverage of some kind.
I have two beverages actually, so I came prepared.
Oh, great. No
Yeah.
butterbeer though, so you lied.
Well, I may have some equivalent variation of a butterbeer in the fridge, but yeah,
Maybe for next time.
yeah, but it's great to meet you in person and as close to as in real life as we get, I guess.
Yeah, same. Although it's always funny because I don't know how much you know about me, but I'm not an interviewer. I'm not like all that serious. So I try to, with these conversations, it's always a little bit interesting because I'm like, it is meeting for the first time and I don't want to pretend like it's not. So rather than like stalking you on the internet for hours and hours and hours, I just like to keep it a little bit more casual, especially for the first one, because there are, I don't know, people who stand out particularly on Twitter to me for different things, but you are definitely one of them. And so,
Thank
yeah,
you.
when you agreed, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, no, I'm so happy. Like, I really enjoy doing these because, I don't know, I've gotten so much of just being in interviews. Like the Delphi one, Tom's just a great interviewer, and sometimes like I discover parts about certain things that I just was never thinking of or wanted clarity on. And all of a sudden, the interviews like are those moments where I have like can be like moments of clarity. But it's also good
Yeah.
to just interact with people in the crypto community generally.
Oh, totally. And I mean, like, I also try to be a little bit cautious that you're not repeating the exact same things over and over again. And it is fun to just kind of like, when you do have those little rabbit holes, like go down them, because I don't know how much time you have today. I want to be respectful of your time because I actually did have a call with ACK last Friday and we went like an hour and a half and I was like, I didn't intend for that. But just want to make sure I don't take too much of your time.
I get an hour 15 is good. I have a dinner at like 8:30 at 7:15, so it's good. We got time.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I know we do have a lot of questions that came in from a lot of different people. I appreciate you not like answering them all on Twitter because that would have taken some of my content away. So we could start with the easy ones, which I think everyone I was waiting for the second I posted it, which was Harry Potter. I mean, like we've got to know, what's your favorite book? What's your favorite movie? Are they different? Are they the same? Why?
Yeah. So I actually, when I saw the question, it took me a long. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I have to say the Philosopher's Stone, just the first one, because to me it was just so impactful. Like it opened my eyes to this entire world. It's almost like The Hobbit. Like I love Tolkien, and so like The Hobbit to me is always better than the sort of like the Lord of the Rings, like the series of books that followed that. And I think I have to go with the first one because to me it was eye-opening. It was like this magical world that exists, and you just can't take that away. I mean, all of the books are great. It's a very difficult question, but it was everything from like the how like I love the scene where Hagrid just rescues Harry, and it's like they're in this like castle in the middle of the ocean or whatever. But it's magical. Like when he's in the zoo. I was in London for like a token conference, and I was like, I want to go to the zoo. I want to go to the zoo where Harry starts speaking with snakes, Parseltongue. So that's to me probably has the most impact. And the movie, I mean, they're all so great, but I want to say like The Prisoner of Azkaban was pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know. I'd have to
that was an answer. You do know. And it's allowed to change, right? That's actually, I think I told you I watched Prisoner of Azkaban like last week before we even had this. And winter is always the time to kind of like, I don't know, cozy up by the fire, reread the books. But you're right. There is nothing like that first time of, oh, this world in my mind now is like real, and kind of like that mental shift of there was before this existed and now after.
Yeah, I want to show you something.
Okay, please.
It's actually like I collect NFTs, but I do at times collect physical items. And I bought this, what is like an illustrated version of the Philosopher's Stone.
Where did you get this?
At a bookstore in London. So it's like so you open it up. I mean, it's nothing fancy or anything, but it has like, I don't know if you see this, but it opens up. Uh, it's pretty cool. So it's like a illustrated version. Like, look at this.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even opened it really, but yeah, it's pretty awesome. And it's kind of the only book that I have or keep near my bedside.
Okay. Do you often
So
open it?
yeah,
Clearly not. Is it just like for sentimental reasons?
so I just got it, but I've been afraid to like open it. It feels a little delicate, but anyways, this is what I keep.
Beautiful. I love it. So see, again, you
Yeah.
reinforce that you do know the answer and that you have a strong one. So I love
Yes.
it. Well,
Yeah.
I think it's funny. I'm kind of new to this world of like, not anonymous Twitter, but like I haven't been in crypto forever. This like world is kind of, I fell backwards into it myself. And so it's just fun to see different sides of like people's personalities kind of come out. And like I said, you're one of those people who I think can flex a couple of different parts of like your personality more than some people do online. And I think it's fascinating.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on maybe I'll leak some alpha, but I am working on
Ooh.
a project that so I think like we all know J.K. Rowling has been pretty critical against Bitcoin at times.
Yep.
And much like a lot of people, like I feel like they miss the whole element that it's not just Bitcoin.
Right.
And that just tells you how early we are in this sort of like discovery and transformation, technological revolution, whatever you want to call it, that most people are still stuck in this mindset that it is just Bitcoin. And Bitcoin has certain stigmas attached to it and what have you. But my goal, and I'll be announcing this in a couple of weeks, I guess, is I've done something that I think will get her attention.
Okay.
And I want her to discover what is the magical world of crypto, which is NFTs, which is gaming, which is the idea of, in many ways, like, you know, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I first discovered crypto and over time, I felt like you open this door and you see a way of like doing better things. Like we talk about like UBI as an example.
Yep.
Well, it could work very well if you airdrop tokens and you have like spend parameters and approvals, and a lot of things can really work. And so all these ideas that have been tried or really fascinating theoretically can be implemented with crypto, I think.
Definitely.
And I feel like the worst that you can do, it's sort of like this growing frustration. It's like, I just want her to at least revisit
Right.
the idea of crypto because I think it's worthwhile, because I struggled to see a world where she doesn't become fascinated by it if you just probe a little bit deeper.
Or to your point, like take a step back and say, okay, I can still hold that belief that I had that was critical of Bitcoin perhaps, but I can still like expand my worldview a little bit more to reconsider some of the problems that I am very aware of in the world and be willing to see technology as it's progressing, be able to like unlock those new ways of thinking. Because that is a really big mental block for a lot of people who I find actually would probably be the ones that are most interested in the solutions that this technology can unlock, because they're the ones kind of complaining about them in the first place. Which is fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I mean, I think like, I've said it before, but NFTs make crypto very relatable. So
Right.
it increases the probability of someone to actually, you know, not lower their guard, but just enter this world without perhaps even knowing that they're entering this world. But they have to,
Exactly.
somehow buy ETH or Sol or whatever other asset in order to buy the NFT. And I think it's, to me, that's always, I think we're at a very critical kind of juncture where all of a sudden people start using this technology, which for a long time, it's not been usable.
Right.
You're going to go to your parents and say, hey, use this Bitcoin thing. They're like, you know what, like Venmo works fine. JP Morgan works fine. Wells Fargo works fine. Like, just
Well,
go
that's
do
exactly
something else.
it, right? Like when there is a way forward, it's fine until you show them something that they want so much that they're willing to go through those steps without even asking those questions of why do I need to set up a MetaMask? What is Bitcoin? What is blockchain? And all those questions. And then they become so curious because it's centered around the thing they actually care about to then go backwards.
Yeah, I think like technology sort of goes through a phase where like it's initially worked by like Chris Dixon talks about like hobbyists on the fringes, 1,000 true fans, or he talks about these two concepts, which is probably where we've been over the last like 10 years, 8 years, which is very push, like you're pushing this technology, you're advocating for, you're
Right.
evangelizing what you do here, what we do on Twitter, what we do in conferences. Now I think it's sort of moving more towards the direction, like the pendulum is swinging more towards pull,
Right.
as opposed to me pushing this stuff to people. It's actually pull. Like, NFTs are a gravitational pull
Absolutely.
for so many users, and they're like, you know what, I love these things, I love collecting, and so I think it's hitting a nerve where, obviously that, no surprises, is leading to. I mean, just look at OpenSea's volume; like it's parabolic, and I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon.
No, you're not putting this
as you think about
back in the bottle.
Coinbase, FTX, what the FTX is doing. I mean, it's just explosive. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And to that point, like once people then are like financially incentivized in certain ways for it to continue, then it builds on itself. And then they're doing the work for you of kind of like doing that evangelizing, but also creating things that reach new people in new places. Because the one thing I will say that is, it's not scary to me, but like the sense of urgency for how we onboard people because of this shiny thing that like is kind of in this pull state for a number of different reasons, is that kind of like, I mean, I think about websites and like how we use technology today, and we don't care. Most people don't care about the underlying like builds or how it's created or how the technology is furthered, or like thinking critically about making decisions that have to do with like how that reality comes about instead of just if it will or not. And so that's the one thing for me as I watch people who were not previously into crypto almost use NFTs as like a gateway into this whole world. Just making sure that they think about it in the sense of like, we have an opportunity here, not just to reinvent collecting and like bring things online, but really like the underlying decentralization. Do you even care about decentralization? Like there's a lot more to teach other than just like the setup to get people to just buy NFTs. And that's tough.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like, so you always have to bring it back to Harry Potter, right? So
yes,
it is like NFTs are like platform 9 3/4.
Yep.
Or maybe Bitcoin was like platform 9 3/4. But very few people actually go through this door and take the Hogwarts Express or whatever. But like, yeah, I don't know, like, what's that in the Order of the Phoenix, I think? It's like where Ron's dad like uses this hat and like people go to the Quidditch World Cup.
Yep.
In many ways, like NFTs are like that, but like in a mega scale, which is like everyone's just jumping in and like being teleported into this magical world. So yeah, it's pretty exciting times.
Absolutely. How has your like mindset shifted? Because I know you've gone through some changes like this year and kind of like going out on your own. Like how are you thinking about just playing in that space of, hey, there is a lot of attention here right now, but also like there is an education layer to it too.
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to like make sure that we're talking about this stuff objectively and not like
right.
So it's always bothered me, and I've said it many times. It's just like it bothers me to see everyone on TV always talk about price and always talk about what Bitcoin's doing. And always like, where's the price? Where's Ethereum trading? And look, I understand. Like people come here because there's an opportunity, whether it's employment. But look, I'm not. I think it's a great incentive and motivator for people, but I think we can do better. Like we can just talk about this technology objectively. We don't need to be defensive. I don't think we need to. I remember my mindset has shifted from just knowing that there are certain people that I know I'm gonna have to that are going to be very critical. Explaining it to my friends, for instance, that are like traditional Wall Street people or former employers, like at a venture fund that I was working at. Like I just know like the conversation was an uphill battle. But I think like my mindset has changed where, as opposed to me trying to like answer their questions in a very defensive tone, I just say, look, have you tried it? Just go and try it.
Right.
Just go and try it. And this is my approach when I was talking to a lot of people over the last year. When I was talking about DeFi, I was like, go and try it. You're a banker, like you're in finance, you're in private equity or venture, like go and use these things and then come back to me. You're a bond trader. Okay, great. Go and buy and use these protocols. And then tell me if you are not truly fascinated by what flash loans are, for instance, or new primitives.
Right.
Like it's hard. I've always found like maybe 9 out of 10 people that use this stuff probably are like, okay, I get it now. And so just going back to your question, I'm very focused on this education piece. So I want to probably launch a podcast. I'm still like collecting thoughts around how I'm going to do it. I do like your format, which is, I think a lot of podcasts are really boring, which is like they follow the same kind of path.
Yeah.
Whereas this is a little bit more interactive. And yeah, I want to go to places like Davos and talk to people about this stuff, but just objectively, because I don't have an agenda. I just,
Right.
like the stuff. And I feel like, that's what people just need to hear. They also don't need to hear, oh, you've missed this stuff for the last 8 years. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
It's like, that's probably a sure way of not getting a lot of people's attention. So yeah, I'm really focused on that. I mean, as you know, like I'm still like angel investing. I love investing.
Yeah.
I was with Maki and a few builders over the weekend, and I have some ideas of things that I want to see built, but haven't been built, and so maybe I'll build some stuff. I don't think I'm a builder, but at least just to incubate it and get it off the
Right.
ground.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's one of the things that's so cool about building in this space is you just really can see how different people's perspectives like are additive to the final product and not, I don't know, just that transparency and collaboration is so fascinating to me because that's another like mental leap where, to your point, it's not about like, oh, this is this club and like we're going to build this and you're going to get the product afterwards. It's like it is meant to be shared and distributed, and people will break things or give you new like stress tests on products that should be obviously widely adopted. And so it's cool to see people who are humble about it, where it's not, this is fact. It's like, what do you want it to be, right? Like we have the opportunity now to, once you do get curious, follow those little rabbit holes of what does need to be built. What do I want? What would I use if I had it? And that's one thing, actually, it's funny, but to your point, even about like universal basic income, like that's one thing in crypto that I find very fascinating is this. There are a number of people now who have made a substantial amount of money, and so they don't have to make decisions based on purely financial short-term interests. And that is such a powerful thing to watch. Like people do stuff that looks stupid, but to your point, like isn't necessarily baked into the value of what we see in like the price of a coin or like an NFT going up. It's like all the intangibles that have actually mattered more than anything ever before are now kind of like being monetized, but you start to decouple decisions solely from price-based choices, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think like I definitely agree. So like in my mind, Ethereum is great because I can't think of a piece of technology that has made this amount of wealth for a distributed base, this as a distributed base as Ethereum.
Right.
Full stop. I mean, you had so many people that, made life-changing money.
Yeah.
And I think the ethos is a lot of these people are self-made.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think there's an element of that, a character to that in the community that you always give back. And a lot of, look at consensus. I mean, Joe Lubin single-handedly has been, one of the largest funders of R&D for the ecosystem. The Ethereum Foundation, Vitalik, and the list, and it goes down from there. Like, I think, so ultimately, like, I think that's very powerful, this idea of constantly reinvesting in growth. And look, I mean, Ethereum, I don't like to pick sides. I'm not a maximist. I think probabilistically, I don't think that, the success of Ethereum detracts from Bitcoin or vice versa. But I do like, from a philosophical standpoint, I affiliate myself more with a community that knows that it's not perfect.
Yep.
And you're sort of building it as you go. And the best you can do is entertain multiple trains of thought, bring it, and just optimizing, bringing the smartest people. And I think, I was just in in Lisbon for ETHCon, and every time I go, I just find that it is, and I'm going to Solana, so maybe you can ask me in a couple of weeks. I think these ecosystems just are attracting and sucking a lot of brain power, and I think it's hard to bet against crypto when you see the human capital side of it. It's almost like, you might as well bet against human creativity, which is a bet that I would never take.
Yes.
And look, it's not a perfect ecosystem. It's not a perfect environment. No. None of it is. I think there are things that we can do better, for sure.
Of course.
But yeah, it's always really refreshing to like go to these conferences, meet people, and particularly like the willingness to like understand that, we don't know how this space is going to look in 6 months, let alone a year or 5 years. There are like core elements and properties of a system that gives you the guarantees that you can build on top of it, or you can buy an NFT and know that like you own that IP, you own that property. You know, you're not going to be rugged by platforms like Facebook, Google, Apple that are just, control these walled gardens. And I think that is all it. When I kind of realized that over the years, I became increasingly interested in just kind of maniacally into. I mean, I was investing in open source before I saw Ethereum, but to me that was the real aha moment, which is you just sort of take the long bet that like something good will come out of this environment where people can come and go, and it gives you the trust and guarantees to build and be an owner and participate in that upside. So as a community, I think the last thing I'll say is there is this common tendency to criticize success and be like, oh, these people made money, and you know what? It's fine. Like things are not linear. Like things get adopted really quickly, and people. I mean, a lot of people are very surprised, but like the pace of innovation and adoption is like, well, yeah, like you're almost like allowing money to be moved at the speed of information. Like, what the hell do you think that was going to do? Like, you think things are going to move slow? Absolutely not. And so it is a little bit difficult to comprehend sometimes. And there's a lot of randomness. Like, I don't think anyone would have predicted the rise of Axie the way that it did. For a long time, it was just like, it was growing month over month. And then all of a sudden, boom. Was it COVID? Was it a change in their token? Was it a number? I don't know. Like correlation, causation, right? But OpenSea volume, like a lot of these things, there is a lot of randomness and magic, I think, attached to it. But you just sort of understand that a lot of really good things happen when you create these safe environments for people to build.
And you start, I think, like once you make that decision. I think the thing that's hard for people right now that I'm starting to notice is like, okay, certain people who are like working outside of this industry, they're like passionate on Twitter or like excited because they've kind of like been exposed to this magic and start to, like see all of the human capital surrounding this, like start to play with ideas in their head, realize how they can kind of contribute. But I think it's going to be so important to start to figure out how to like harness that human capital and like use it effectively at the same rate that like we are seeing this adoption happen on these platforms and like these protocols, because there's so much willingness even from a great number of people who don't know what that next step necessarily looks like and who are maybe starting to think about this 1, 5, 10 years out, but don't know what that looks like for them today. And it is kind of a difficult place to have like 1 foot in, 1 foot out of this world, because you do start to, really pick apart so many, even just like decisions that get made in traditional companies, whether it's monetization models or like just your day job, like essentially becoming unnecessary while you watch all of this craziness happen. That is a piece. I don't know. I'm sure you've seen like stuff get better, but
I love history. And so to me, it always stuck like this idea of like ancient Athens or where like, it is kind of like UBI, like people were paid to think. And obviously there were patrons like Medici's and more in the arts sphere. But think of Athens, like you were paying like people to think, like I guess philosophers like Plato and Aristotle and a few others. But, is it crazy to think that like, how many Elon Musk would we have? Right. If people didn't have to think that they can't provide for their family, and like,
absolutely.
It just like probabilistically, like, that there's a lot of untapped potential because as human, like, the good thing of all this is technology has just created this incredible amount of surplus. Like over the last 20 years, like the prices of a lot of things, like think about how less expensive it is to move goods around because, we've improved certain logistics technology and what Amazon has done. Like now it's very like technology is like created so much consumer surplus and has created abundance for a lot of people. Like fertilization and all this stuff, like improving yields on crops. And so like, I think like constantly, like as human beings, we come to this like point where like, all right, shit, we got to get our shit together. And like somehow we come up with a technology. It's almost like it's almost like growing up in middle school. Like you knew that like you punted to the last minute to get your homework done, but then you kind of figure it out last minute. I think that's humanity. This is how like we do these sequential waves of innovation, which is like we bump into and we're like, all right, things are starting to get pretty dire here, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we have a huge leap. And I think we're at that point where like crypto will facilitate like ideas, and going back to this train of thought, like UBI, for example, like Scandinavian countries like Finland have explored it. People like certain provinces in Canada have explored it, but somehow it kind of doesn't work. Like it doesn't scale, or people have criticism. But I think the underlying data is pretty positive. Like a lot of criticisms are like, oh, you give people money, all of a sudden they're going to go play PlayStation all day long and not do anything and be unproductive. And I think the data suggests actually otherwise, which is if you give money to people and it sort of like allows them to like, it reinvigorates their desire to like go out and do something productive.
Right.
Because they don't have, it all of a sudden, frees up mental like headspace to go out and think about things that how many people you stumble upon and say, look, I've always had this idea, but
right.
I've never, there's so many of them.
Or they put limiting beliefs on themselves because of those like financial decisions. And that's like, that really changes how people make decisions regardless.
Yeah. And so I think like obviously like DAOs are pretty interesting in that capacity. I always think of the book The Giver, like which is like these micro communities and cosmos. Like okay, it's not very. I'm not suggesting that it's super scalable. Like we need to do so many things to improve DAOs and how they are operated. But I think the upside of all this is, people can now congregate and form bonds and co-ops in ways that are, again, utilizing the same properties of crypto, of like transparent, like radical transparency, ownership and clear rules and parameters on how things can be administered and how capital and resources can be just consumed and used or invested. And so I think like that's pretty cool. And I think like a lot of, we're seeing DAOs like Pleaser DAO in the art sphere. We're seeing DAOs just in like syndicate DAOs, just like type of like angel list investment clubs, if you will. But like, I think we'll see an explosion of DAOs just generally outside of these two kind of initial like pilots, I think. And that's what, I guess like the Grameen Bank, going just to round out the UBI thing, like this is Mohammed Yunus thing that he started in like, what was it, Bangladesh? And he went out and, created these micro communities where people were like held accountable, and he was mostly giving money to women because women like administer, he found that administer funds better than males in the household. They know kind of like the things that need to be bought to like cook and all this stuff. But yeah, I think like all of this can be expressed through a smart contract.
Yeah. It's also fun too. Like you even just to even challenge one of the things you said, which I don't think you necessarily believe, but just this idea of like, okay, if you give people money, they're going to go do things that are unproductive, like go play games or XYZ. And it's like, well, if you rethink what that actually is, it is like collaboration with other people. It is like building strategy. Like if you don't look at, hey, you bought a game and you get nothing out of it, and like that's the way that even, I mean, gaming as an example of one thing is, you can reimagine all of those things that were previously limiting beliefs, but could actually be unlocked when you look deeper at what they're doing instead of what they're selling.
Absolutely. No, I 100%. Like this idea of like, oh, you're a productive member of society is, I think, what you're saying, which is, it's changing, right? Which is 9 to 5, working at a factory or a job that is just, you're sitting at a desk and doing all this FaceTime, which I certainly know that I've done. It's bullshit. There's no reason why we should have it. And I think COVID sort of came and shadowed that notion, which is, hey, people can be productive from home and they can do other things. And they the passion economy, kind of Uber and Airbnb kind of initially kind of deconstructed this idea of you need to be going to work. Ultimately, I think we just need to, in my process, I've always latched onto things that like give, like that I can, free up and spark like a creative process, whether it's running or whether it's walking or reading or even playing games. Like, I think like, I mean, not to be cliche, but some of the best discoveries throughout history have been by accident. And I don't think it's by accident. It's just because you allow yourself to venture into other realms in your brain, the collective unconscious, whatever you want to call it. But you just put yourself in a position where, I don't know, maybe you can discover certain things, because if you're just thinking in this cubicle mindset that we've been latched onto for so many years, I don't think a lot of things are going to get done.
Totally. Well, they're not. And I think it also is this shift too from like the passive consumption or like use of technology to like the active contribution, and seeing them as tools where, again, like there's always been a group of people that's thought this way, but there hasn't really been a way for everyday people to feel like they actually can make contributions to society, to communities, to like these real serious problems that are like, they're human problems, right? Like, and if you look at technology as the facilitator of figuring those things out, then you start to unlock things like imagination and creativity being the most valuable assets that humans can provide.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I think that the skeptic listener might say, oh, wait, that's just a bunch of bullshit. You know, what are you talking about? Like, I need to work, and this guy's just LARPing, like just saying like, yeah, I could be playing games and make a living. I'm like, well, you can do that. And I know it could be a stretch, but you can do it with Axie. It's not a perfect play to earn model, but you know, it's no different than Uber. And I think it's totally going to, Web3 as a whole is going to radically transform labor structure and how we think about like organize and how we value, measure contributions, as you said, which is okay. The sort of like we've been fixated in this assembly line of thinking, which is input, output, and it's all very linear relationship, but it's really not. It takes one good idea to all of a sudden invent something that is totally transformational.
Absolutely.
And can have so much impact. Not so much so in a world where like, again, ideas spread like wildfire because you have the distributed mesh of the internet, which, you know, think about the printing press of the steam engine. Like it was invented in the UK by James Watt. And then it took and then it kind of trickled to France or Germany. And then it went to the US, or maybe it was the US before Germany. But it took so many years for this adoption curve, right? Ultimately, everyone caught up and said, wow, like this is great. But now that's not the case. You can literally deploy a smart contract protocol or whatever, and then all of a sudden things get rapid adoption. And I think we're converging on the truth much, much faster to a point that it scares me a little because, you know, it's hard to keep up as humans. I think we're going to come up to a point where it's going to be hard to like keep up with this pace of innovation. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it already kind of, it doesn't feel like we're there necessarily, but like you can see it every day. It just exponentially increases. How do you like manage even your time or like brain space? There's so many problems to solve. There's so many places to contribute. I'm sure like you get ideas brought to you all day, every day. And like, how do you prioritize them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I'm pretty good at that, candidly.
Really?
No, I mean, I think so there are certain themes that I just every once in a while I think of like, okay, and this is sort of the realization that I was over the last 9 months or a year now, that I just saw something really powerful in some of these in the NFT world and gaming world, and just paying close attention to what was happening in Axie and what was happening in the Larva Labs Discord. And I've just learned to listen to that and always, I make a point of myself to, and I've used this analogy before. So anyways, I'll repeat myself, which is, but it's like walking into a bookstore when they existed, they no longer exist. Now Apple's or Amazon's algorithm just feeds you whatever you bought
Right.
But that sort of like going into Barnes and Noble and saying, or a library and saying, I'm going to go venture to an aisle that I've never been before because there's value there. And I think in crypto is served me well because it is, you know, think about like Web3 as a category. I mean, there's so many different areas that you can focus your attention on. You know, I think over the last 2 years, you know, the thesis that I had was like big on DeFi. You know, I think it was just, but largely like things needed to happen for that. And I think what really caught my attention was when Maker as a system was very resilient during the bear market, like the value, like the stability of DAI in the face of like the value of the collateral ETH at the time declining 80%. I said, well, that's just pretty anti-fragile, or as close as it's going to get. So if this system can support itself on its own without any sort of bailout, know something here, and you need to have a stable coin
Right.
to then support all the different applications. And so that, I think, like over the last 10 years, I've made so many mistakes of like, a lot of this stuff is very exciting, but has dependencies to them. So like think about Augur as a prediction market. Well, Augur V1 was, look, prediction markets are fascinating, this idea of like wisdom of the crowds, but
Right.
it didn't have the right components. Like you weren't settling in a stable coin, you were settling in ETH. And so that introduces, it makes it much more difficult to actually take
Totally.
off. And so, now we're a different time, which is I'm going back to ideas that were tried before,
Mm,
like a prediction market, but layering on top, okay, you have a thriving DeFi ecosystem, you have a thriving, relatively thriving stablecoin flavors, if you will. You have also in layer twos, which radically compress the cost of doing things, and so you're almost left wondering, okay, well there are things that were just too early, and I think like, but yeah, just how I manage my time. I mean, I think like all this to say is I think thematically, like there's certain areas
yeah,
like DeFi, like NFTs to me is I'm spending more and more and more of my time thinking about this intersection of DeFi and gaming. Because I think the flow will be a user comes in, starts playing Axie, then says, hey, I can play other stuff, and I can take my games and go play Illuvium and go play Ember Sword or go play all these other different games. And then they just end up spending more and more time, and then invariably they say, hey, what else can I do here? Hey, I want to earn
absolutely.
some stuff. Hey, I want to, and so I think like um, that will probably there's one of these games that is just going to become a total behemoth, which is not only doing like God's work of just onboarding millions of users,
Yeah,
but also just integrating with this entire ecosystem that is DeFi that works. And maybe people don't even realize that they're using DeFi in the back end.
absolutely.
Because DeFi as a whole can be pretty daunting. Like you tell people to go interact and play with Uniswap or some of these protocols and do yield farming. It's like rocket science. It's very daunting.
Right. And
Finance is
it's like,
most
it's
people
also
don't
like,
understand
why,
money here.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, why would you do it? Um, but yeah, like people understand earning interest and growing their capital base, and so I think that's part of the appeal of playing a play to earn game.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think it's going to be explosive, like that intersection of, of DeFi and gaming and like NFTs, and so at the moment that's where I'm spending most of my energy.
Well, I think it's good too, because back even to the point about like everyone kind of having their own unique perspective, it's good for everyone to take, hey, what actually excites me here? Like, what are those underlying factors? Because you can see themes, you can see waves, you can see like there's so many patterns at play right now, like whether it's looking back at history, whether it's looking at other industries, like all of that interoperability leads to different things sparking different people's like interests. And so following those little threads, especially in a time like right now when that stuff needs to be built, right? Like it doesn't,
Mm.
you don't have all of the answers and you never will. But I really like how you've said like thinking in probabilities, because it allows you to just keep an open mind. It's like, if you believe X, then what would be possible, or what would you look for? And it just leads to, I think, better questions that come to better outcomes, instead
Mm.
of boxing
Mm.
yourself into a corner or feeling like you either missed it or you picked the wrong one. And so much of
Mm. Mm.
I think like everyone, no matter how much they're into investing as a concept, needs to understand those types of behaviors, because we're now like essentially investing in culture, in people, in
Mm.
numerous other
Mm.
things. And so there's just so much to
Mm.
learn from each other.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think like NFTs is a so like when I think of investing in a DeFi protocol, I think in a very fundamental way. Like, okay,
right.
what's the token design and the value accrual here of a system like SushiSwap is quite different from Uniswap, and how do these protocols accrue value sustainably over time, and where do the fees go, and you go from that mindset to, okay, I'm gonna somehow try to ascertain what the price of this NFT should be, and look, at always it's difficult, right? I think it's sort of like putting to test a lot of like deep rooted like theories of like mimetic culture and what drives
Yeah.
value, and it's I always like reached out to my professors back in the day. I've stopped doing it because I've given up, which is like, why wouldn't you pay attention to this stuff? This is like this
Yeah.
is the best playing ground to test theories of like sociology, game theory,
Yep.
just a number of experiments in real time.
Hmm.
Like you can change some parameters of a particular project and see how that drives behavior. It's fascinating. Like, but yeah, like it's hard to value NFTs other than like you then totally are put into question like what drives value, full stop. Like what gives
Right.
value to X and Y, and
Exactly.
it's this analogy of turtles all the way down. Well, everything is a social construct. The idea
Hmm.
that you believe that the dollar has value is rooted on the idea that the U.S. government has F-150 or F-9 fighters or whatever, and credit has always been enforced through violence, and the U.S. as it stands is the most dominant country in the world, and so yada yada yada, and so like, but then what drives big value to Bitcoin? Well, there's a scarce resource, and people believe that Bitcoin has value because you're expending all this energy. Okay, fine, but everything is a social construct, and so
Absolutely.
I think this idea of NFTs is super fascinating. You know, you're essentially saying that the price of admission to this club of crypto punks is like $500,000 or whatever now, and Cool Cats is not, is not too. I guess it's still high, and the price of admission for Bored Apes is 100,000 or whatever,
Yeah.
and so how's that any different from a membership club, your local country club or whatever? No, the I think the super bullish case for NFTs is that it's just a starting point, and I
Yeah.
think Bored Ape sort of like is giving you insight into how these things can develop,
Hmm.
which is you could have just from the outside in said, oh, this is just a random NFT drop. Like, why
Right.
would I care about these Bored
And
Apes?
people
Some
did
of
for
them
a
are not
little
even.
bit.
Yeah, I mean, like, do I like them? I don't know. I like
Yeah.
punks better, but this is aesthetically pleasing. I like punks better than Bored Apes. Some of them, yeah,
I was gonna
at
say
least.
yours is pretty good.
Well, thank you. I like you have a cool cat,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, cool cats are pretty awesome. They're cute, even though I'm more of a dog
But it
person.
is
But
funny though, like even that, like I mean, I bought
yeah,
mine at like 0.78 ETH, and like it that's a very different type of investment than like telling someone to buy one at this moment in time. Like it's
yeah, yeah. And look, I mean, it brings up a really interesting point, which we touched on the panel in Lisbon, which was a lot of what we've seen now is buying NFTs.
yeah.
But I think over time, this idea of earning NFTs
Hmm.
is going to be pretty powerful as a way for protocols to, drive engagement and retention. I mean, I've talked to a lot of the companies, protocols that I'm an investor in. It's like, why are you not using NFTs to drive engagement?
Right.
Not sell them. Don't do a drop. Okay, if you want to raise money, fine, do a drop. But allow users to earn NFTs. So I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. So like you deposit an Aave, and you've been a depositor for 6 months, you get a certain NFT. And if you've been a
Yep.
depositor for 2 years and you've never been liquid, or like, if you're a borrower, you get another NFT. And then if you've never been liquidated and you've kept your health ratio above 1.5, you get another NFT. And so you start seeing a way for people to earn these NFTs. Ultimately, it's just you're building a digital identity.
Absolutely.
And then the really interesting thing is as Aave as a whole could think, okay, what is the ultimate like the best that you can get? Well, you have like a jigsaw of like NFTs that come together. You can even have like
Absolutely.
polymorphs, which is morphing NFTs based on your on-chain activity. So say that you sell a token, then the NFT could self-destruct. And so
Absolutely.
like the diamond hands NFT turns into paper hands NFT or something like that. And so all of a sudden, like, you can really influence behavior. At the end of the day, that's what blockchains are for. I mean, your coordination
Absolutely.
mechanism. So you're just driving towards coordination through a set of incentives. NFTs, as I've seen them, are probably the best type of incentive because they're so visually appealing for people. Now you can tell people what the monetary policy is and what the yield is on the farm or whatever, and that's all nice and okay. But the emotional cachet of an NFT is bananas. Like
Absolutely.
and I'm explicitly using the word bananas because we think of ourselves as apes in this ecosystem. But but you know what I mean? Like yeah, like I would like to see more protocols. I think it's a very unexplored area of
Absolutely.
using NFTs as further instruments for coordination and incentives.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, even think about the possibilities of, even just like networking almost, where it's like finding people who have similar, not just financial like purchases for you, right? Like if I bought a punk, like sure we have something in common, but it's like, what's deeper than that? I've always asked these questions from a sense of, so I worked at Facebook, and it's just very interesting to think about, like, again, value accrual and what is actually driving that value. Like we always talked about creators and users differently, and it was like, these are just super users of your platform, and like really all of the interactions that happen are valuable. Like this company would be worth nothing without the attention that it is facilitating here. And I specifically like worked with mobile gaming advertisers who were so focused on acquisition and never retention and lifetime value, and like subscription companies even. It was like just all the primitive versions of we've been incrementally moving in this direction. And now we have just a much better way of facilitating.
Yeah. I mean, the bullish case for gaming, which I love, is, okay, we know the issues with traditional games, which is you look at a company like Zynga, and it's sort of like you're in this like hamster wheel, which is you constantly need to be putting out more games because the half-life and engagement of these users is really, really bad.
Totally.
And so if you don't put out a game in 6 months, you're done.
Yeah.
Not only that, but like 0.1 or 0.01% of users are driving like 90% of the revenue. And so it's super challenging. My thesis for like when I first saw Axie was like, holy shit, well, this solves a lot of the issues of, you know, of engagement and retention. Now, you know, you use NFTs, like, okay, so like if you're like Fortnite right now, like, why are you not issuing NFTs to everyone that's ever played Axie? You know which wallets have SLP, i.e. they played this game. Like, I'm like, who's running these companies? I mean, God damn it, this company is cranking out $4 billion in revenue. How much more revenue do you think is going to crank if like issues NFTs and drives more engagement? Like,
but that's the problem, is they get so protective over like that revenue number that they don't want to harm like what's worked, and it's like you're killing yourself in the process. Yeah,
well, classic like innovator's dilemma. You know, just to, not to name drop like MBA terms. I never did an MBA. I don't think there's value in doing MBAs, but that's just no advice, but y'all can go do your MBA and like learn about Porter 5 forces, or you can just go to crypto and learn about it in a day. Yeah, I mean, talk about that. That is, in my mind, probably the biggest scam that we are living in today. Like the value of education is crazy. The amount of student debt. You know, I was faced with the choice of either having to figure out how to pay for the last 2 years of university because my dad couldn't afford it. And I just decided to graduate early because I said, this is a scam. Like, I wasn't allowed to take upper level finance classes, even though I needed them to get an internship at JP Morgan. I was like, how is this system's just rigged? And so
I did the same thing for what it's worth.
There we go. Yeah. I mean, I mean, it's not to go too off track, but like, I think like people just have this idea.
Nothing's off
like,
track.
I feel like a lot of people have this notion that like once you graduate, like, you know, you're done. You become a professional. You have a certified title as a doctor. The problem is like most doctors, the number of errors by doctors increases as they practice, because most of them don't catch up to new procedures and developments. Right. And there's this sort of ego notion and you know. But I think that the beauty about crypto is, you know, I to this day, like a lot of times I say, hey, could I be doing something else? And the answer most of the time always is no, because this is a space where I continuously get challenged every other day. And it's a new idea, a new concept, and you can put it into practice. And I think it's super fascinating. So whereas a lot of, you know, when you think about an age where we're going out, which is increasingly a lot of pockets of the composition of labor are going to be totally displaced by automation and technology. And so what do? Well, UBI is probably a good answer to that. But I think Web3 credibly offers, again, I love how you framed it, which is you're at the core, like transforming how we think about and measure value.
Absolutely.
And I think like, as opposed to saying, no, this is how we measure value in an industrial revolution context, like in this paradigm of what is very, you know, process driven, so, you know, assembly line nonsense, 9 to 5, punch in, punch out, in an input output, versus I'm just going to measure the impact of what my ideas have. And I think you can visibly see that in Web3, like you can tangibly measure this. And so, yeah, it's pretty cool. I think I've always considered myself super lucky of being part of this space. I've discovered Bitcoin early on, and but over the years, just I've increasingly become more and more motivated by the people that are entering the space. It's hard not at this point. It's hard not to not pay attention.
Well, as someone who's, like I said, a little bit newer and who, honestly, this technology just answered so many questions that I didn't know had an answer. Like, I have writings from myself from 4, 5, 6 years ago, like trying to think about how we could be creating a third party that could aggregate and own your own data. And I just so many just things that have led to this. I mean, I am incredibly grateful every single day to even be able to have a vehicle for these thoughts that previously it just felt like screaming into a void almost of what how do we get out of these predicaments we found ourselves in, and to have a path forward and to have other people who are trying to answer similar questions, and to your point, like pushing on the logic and genuinely trying to come together around common answers instead of like this protective ego just way of thinking that just drives me insane. Yeah. It's insane. Like I can't not tell everyone I know. I can't not try my best to get people to just.
Are you the only crazy one in your household, family, or what have you that is obsessed? Great.
Oh yeah.
In your group of friends, are you the only one that is kind of like talking about crypto all day?
All day.
Yeah, and that's. I always like to go to like places and walk around and look how many people here like have heard about crypto. Okay, at this point, like probably. I've heard about crypto, many.
Right.
Can reasonably say that they own it or have used it, probably 0. Like 1 out of 10.
Absolutely. And I, like I said, I mean, I work in tech. I am starting to now, I've been talking about this for at least 8 months now with people that I know in some way, shape, or form, which is like no time, but also a lot of time. And they are starting now. Like I get texts. Like I get GM texts now. I'm like, okay, this is a good sign.
I love that. Yeah.
But yeah, I do feel it's starting to change a little bit, but that's why I've tried really hard. And I know you mentioned this at the beginning about just not being defensive or like trying to shut people out by any means, but like give them an opportunity to see something that sparks their interest and then come with questions. 'Cause that's a much better place to start a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, the surest way to get punched in the face is to tell someone that they're a muggle.
Exactly. They don't like that.
They don't like that. So, you're better off just, assimilate, blending in and then somehow showing them a little bit of magic.
Exactly.
Just drop them an NFT.
I know. No, seriously, like that's kind of where my head went, where I'm like, I bought the ENS domain, actually, like GM welcome to NFTs or something. Because I was like, I just want to start compiling assets, and like if you can set up a MetaMask, like I'll send you some stuff, just play around, and then you'll get addicted yourself, and I won't even have to tell you anything else.
Yeah, no, that's so true. That's so true. So your journey was, you were at Facebook and then you decided doing like games and marketing for games and Facebook, and then you just full time now in crypto?
No, so I actually left Facebook to go to Reddit on the premise of a lot of these different themes, but very quickly realized I was kind of doing the exact same job I was doing at Facebook, and I literally couldn't. I was like, I'm so sorry, but I cannot physically do this job. Like, I know what needs to be done. I can't do it. I cannot sell ads. And so I just started writing about Web3 and Reddit, actually, and was like, I'm resigning. I know I just started here, but here's what I would do if I were you. Here's my resignation letter. And I don't know what's next, but I must follow this urge. And yeah.
That's excellent. Well, see, I love hearing that. I think and how do you, maybe, I don't mean to switch roles here, but I'm just curious, like, how have you found your journey of trying to figure out what to do in crypto?
Well, it's been a lot of hanging out on Twitter and just talking to people. No, it's actually been, I'm a writer, kind of, like, that's kind of my medium of creativity, I would say. Not that I do a lot of it, but that's just kind of how my brain works, is how do I just start somewhere and brain dump a bunch of thoughts. And so I started publishing them actually on LinkedIn. Haven't done it in a while, but people just started reaching out to me like, hey, I know you just started at Reddit, but like you are clearly interested in this space, like would love to talk, whether it was like consulting opportunities or roles or whatever. And so I still at this moment, like don't exactly know what it looks like. But people have just been so open and so like kind and like connecting with other people, which is really, really fun.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice to have a DAO that is just like the human capital DAO, which is like,
Yes.
I mean, I think there are some kind of variations of this, but like essentially the hardest problem that every single team that I invest in always struggles with, which is I can't find enough people.
Yeah.
And I just think it's just a coordination. It's a coordination problem. And this is like an idea that I've had, and I think there are a few teams trying to do this, but it feels to me like if we focus on that, like we can unlock much more value.
Yeah.
In making it, I think you alluded to this earlier, but
definitely
there's some sort of DAO. What is you kind of solve a lot of things that like reputation,
right?
And over time, like the NFTs that you collect, the things that you do on chain are your digital resume, and so there's really kind of no reason why we shouldn't be able to kind of assemble this DAO, a human capital DAO, call it LinkedIn on steroids, which just places people. And there are a few teams trying to do this, but I think there's a lot to do there, because I think as interest will only continue to rise,
right,
people want to come into the space, and I don't get the sense that they know exactly where to go.
No, they don't.
And there's cryptocurrency jobs, and there's places and forums that they can do it, but and there's Rabbit Hole, which is a journey more user-centric, which is, it will allow you to discover more from a user perspective. But that's not to say you can't extend that logic and say, hey, from an actual onboarding perspective, like from a finding work perspective, you can go through these journeys and discover what you can be good at and how you can optimize your contributions to this like ever-expanding universe of Web3.
Absolutely. And also not just have like the same thing crop up 17 different times with people with kind of similar ideas who just don't know each other. Like that coordination problem will be a nightmare.
Yeah. Just create a better router of idea, talent, and then just matching.
I mean, all this aggregation is going to be
never atomically.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I know you have to go to your dinner soon. I want to ask you these other questions because I will get yelled at if I do not.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, well, I answered this one for you on Twitter, but do you ever get mistaken for 6529 walking around the metaverse?
Absolutely, all the time. All the time.
I was like...
Publicly, I'll say thank you to my fellow hoodie punk, because I think he is much more eloquent, much more intelligent than I am, and I think I've gotten some credit for. I'm like, guys, it's not me. Like, it's actually him.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was you for like a period of time. I was like, it's too good.
Funny though, I was going to buy that punk.
Really?
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't.
Do you wish you had that punk?
No, I'm happy with my punk. I actually have him right here, but yeah, I'm. This is the power of hoodie punks.
Yeah, totally.
But I do get confused a lot, yeah.
I mean, even I like posted my little like circles, and people were like, how is 6529 in it twice? I'm like, no.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be like the younger brother, like, oh, you're the brother of the quarterback. You know what I mean? Like in high school. I never had a brother, but I think this is what the closest feeling. By the way, I don't know if he's male or female. He's my I call him a brother.
He's called you brother too. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's called me brother. So I never had a brother. I always wish I had an older brother that could show me the way, right? Because I was probably like an idiot growing up. Like I didn't know anything. I had two older sisters. But so a shout out to my fellow punk brother. I always wanted to have an older brother, and I consider him my older brother because I think he has much more wisdom than I have, and so I'm just absorbing his wisdom, and so he's showing the way, I guess.
Well, this is either like legit psyops, and you're like the best liar ever, or I believe you.
Look, I'm not bad at poker, but this is not psyops. Just two
All
different
right,
people.
fine. Well, I had to ask because there definitely was a moment. Not that I mistake the two of you for each other, but I was like, I swear, if I'm about to talk to him and like he's 6529, I'm gonna be so embarrassed. Okay, next
Maybe,
question.
I don't know, maybe psyops.
I know. I'm still like, it's gonna stay in the back of my mind until I figure it out. But
Yeah.
all right, another question. What shampoo and
You know
conditioner?
what the only way to prove that is?
What?
You can have both of us in one podcast, and it will be impossible because you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah. Okay,
if we're
I'm gonna
both
clip
talking,
this
it's
then,
impossible.
so that now he has to accept that as we have to do that.
That's the way to know, prove that we're not the same person.
Well, again, this is serious psyops because if he says no or doesn't respond, it's like, oh, you tried, but
Yeah, I don't know. Actually,
all right. Well, now you have to answer the shampoo and conditioner question because that was another favorite of the crowd.
I literally buy whatever I can find in the random supermarket that I go to. There's no science behind this, and I'm sorry guys to break it. I think I like whatever I can find. Whatever smells good. I just go and like I have one that smells like coconut. And I don't know, it's winter time, so this puts me in a nice spot. It smells like coconut.
Great. So what this person needs to know.
I don't use conditioner. I'm sorry.
What?
Like, it's too well, no, like I maybe when I'm in a hotel and they always put these little things, like I use it literally by mistake. But I've never found a point. It's weird. I don't ever know how much time I should put it on. You know, it's very complicated and it's just too stressful. I just use shampoo.
Okay.
If someone can give me a guide to how to use conditioner, I'd love to see it because I never knew how to use this goddamn thing. There's no instructions on it anyways. Is it 5 minutes?
Have you
10
looked
minutes?
it up?
It's just extra anxiety in my life that I don't need. Shampoo is great. I can just lather
You're
my
looking
hair.
at the conditioner like, this is too complicated.
There are no
can't.
instructions. Yeah, people assume that I know how to use a conditioner. I'm sorry, I don't. There's good things that I'm good at. Conditioner and the art of like how to do this. I'm sorry, guys, but
So the prioritization of time, conditioner is like at the bottom of that.
I was thinking my shower time is like radically compressed, like optimal. Like I like being in the shower, but it's just enough to like get dirt off my system. That's it.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Well,
not to sound too stoic.
There you go. And I don't know if that answers your own question of if we shower in the metaverse or not, but it's clearly not a priority of yours. And you got the hoodie, so you're all good.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the hoodie is great because it protects. It's like the invisibility. It's almost like the invisibility cloak, but it's good because it just fleeces
But people
off
can see you,
things.
so it's great.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Look, for a long time, I've always wondered like why people were not so interested in hoodies. I'm like, this is the best trait that you could ever have. It's like hacker
Comfy.
culture.
Yeah.
It's comfy and it's great. And so a shout out to all the hoodie punks out there because I think it's very cozy being in a hoodie.
I actually have a friend who finally got to the place where he was like, okay, I'm ready to buy an NFT. Like, I'm going to buy a punk. And I was like, no, like, just you buy a hoodie punk or you don't buy a punk. And he was like, what the hell? You spent so much time selling me on NFTs and now I want to buy one. And you're like telling me to go spend $1 million. I'm like, I'm just telling you the rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so funny.
What other pressing questions do we have?
Well, I was going to say, like, this list is, it goes back and forth between, like, what is the strangest tick of you, the sir? They said we all have some tick. For example, I can't even concentrate on reading a single page of a book if I don't have clean glasses. What's your tick?
Actually, yeah, I mean, clean glasses are I like to noodle around with pens.
Okay.
All the time.
Yeah, were you planning on like writing notes during this or something?
Yeah, people I think in probably like, is he taking notes? Like, I don't understand what's going on with. But
I mean, I know I like dropped some
gems
gems for you, but I don't know if you need to like write
them
down.
You definitely did. No, you did. I'll write them down when I listen to it. Yeah, no, I think I have many ticks, but I think this is one of the more pressing ones, which is just constantly fiddling around with a pen. I always carry a pen. Always have to have a pen. Not that I have any paper to write on, which is the most absurd thing. Also, I don't have any paper to write on. But there's something comforting around just having a pen.
Do you hold it in your hand all the time?
I collected pens. No, in my pocket. Yeah.
In my pocket. Not like behind your ear.
No, that's like That's carpenter style, I guess.
Wait,
Uh,
you
no, but I collected pens when I was growing up.
okay?
Um, I always liked like the pilot ones. So this is actually a pilot. So
Beautiful.
yeah, so it's good.
It's
Yeah, it's good.
good.
I like
We
pens.
like pens. Someone
We like the pens.
someone else asked, one burning question is, how do I give him my money?
Uh-huh. No, that's a strange
I
question, but
know.
I assume it's related to investing. I don't know, but you don't. You just invest in yourself, and that's the best thing that you can do. Just honestly, like I think a lot of times we jump into a space, and I even feel it. I think all of us. It's kind of impossible to like not ever feel that you are constantly being left behind, and I
Right.
think that is. I think that's a good. I sort of come to terms that that is a good thing. I
Yeah,
think you're supposed to feel that because otherwise, then you know that you're in a static place. And
exactly.
so if you're not constantly feeling like you cannot catch up to this, it's like, look, take comfort in the fact that you're in the right place.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of luck to things. There's timing. I've said this before. There's randomness attached to certain things. Like I can vividly say that I woke up at 3 in the morning and I saw a post by Andre and I discovered X protocol. And like it was just random that I woke up and I checked my phone. Well, I always check my phone. But like there are very discrete moments that I can trace it back and say, God, like that was just pure luck. And so, but I think you're supposed to feel like this growing, I don't want to call it anxiety, but this is growing uneasiness that like things are moving too fast for you to comprehend. And I think the mistakes that I've done are not spending enough time in focusing on my training and education and thinking
Right.
like diagnosing like, okay, I made a mistake, that's fine. But like really
Yeah.
learning from it and not making it again. And
Hmm.
I'll leave you with this, but in 2017 I invested in a lot of stuff. And I think I had to go through that journey. Like if you were to inspect one of my wallets, it's like this guy just touched every single random project that out there. And I'm okay with that. For a long time, I said, hey, I could have just held ETH, and that was okay. Like that literally was a
Right.
winning strategy because it's hard to outperform ETH, it's hard to outperform Bitcoin. But I think I had to go through that process and evolution. And it gave me over time. I recriminated myself too much. Said, why did I do that? And I think what was bothering me is that I didn't truly allow myself the time to look back and say, okay, what was my thought process? Um,
Right.
but now, like I think I learned. I finally came to terms, and I put that chapter behind me when I said, okay, yeah, there's a big opportunity cost. Um, and it was probably not the most tax efficient way to do it or whatever, if you're randomly trading stuff. But I think like ultimately that led me to crystallize my thesis of how I think about developing a thesis
Right.
of of a process of kind of understanding what my edge is, if there is one.
Hmm.
And by the way, I don't think an edge is static. Like maybe you have an edge because you've been at Facebook and Reddit and you understand you're good at writing and you've been and talking to advertisers. And maybe in the right time when a protocol comes out that solves that, well, you have an edge on that and
Right.
you can maximize that. As someone might have an edge because they're an expert in UBI or whatever. But
Or
I
all
think,
of those people together who actually use their own
yeah,
edge
yeah,
together instead of trying to all be everything, which
yeah,
they
yeah,
never can
yeah.
be.
And I'm not a believer that the edge is a static thing. You constantly kind of
Right.
need to reinvent yourself. And look, I pivoted. It's
Totally.
not to say that I totally don't believe in DeFi. Actually, I'm more bullish now because of NFTs and because of gaming.
Right.
I just think it's sort of like a sleeping giant.
Hmm.
But it was difficult for me not to jump as aggressively as I could into
Right.
NFTs and gaming because I've just learned that things in this space don't move slow.
Yeah.
And we're at a point where the infrastructure and the technology is now more moving at applications, not core
Hmm.
infrastructure. And I think that's just gonna, if we're sort of seeing this, I think we're gonna move into that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, a long-winded answer of saying invest in yourself, just understand your process. Take time. Time is what money is for. Like allowing yourself to
Right.
just take time is something that I've never regretted doing.
I love that. And it honestly frees you from feeling like you have to know everything to be right or wrong and
Yeah.
allows you to not be paralyzed by that
Mhm,
feeling and
mhm.
instead like
Yeah,
use
yeah,
it to just keep moving.
yeah. There's two errors that you can make, and one of them is less desirable than the other.
Hmm.
One of them is an error of process, which is in your process is broken, and that is a result of you not learning mistakes that you've done over time, not diagnosing. And the other one is error of outcome. And
Right.
outcomes are things that you can't necessarily control. They're out most of the time. There's a lot of randomness attached to an outcome. And it's all fixed in a particular time interval. And so you could be right over time. You just didn't have the patience.
Right.
And that's an error process. So you say, oh, I discovered Bitcoin, never thought much of it. I never put money in it. That's an error process.
Yes.
Because you could have thought in probabilities and put $10 in or $100
Yep.
just to learn. And then maybe probably over time, you would increase your allocation dramatically. But that is an error process. Because you didn't allow yourself the opportunity to like truly discover something that piqued your interest. So I think you want to be, it's okay to do errors of outcome. There's going to be so many. I mean, that's life, I guess. But I think over time, you just need to understand and perfect your process, because you can perfect your process.
I love that.
No, you can.
Well, I love it.
So my process now, I need to go.
Yeah.
Then otherwise I'm going to be killed. But
No.
I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm so glad you reached out. I hope that maybe we can do this again sometime with my punk brother. If he doesn't want to come on, maybe I'll come on. And,
we'll bully him
conversation.
into it. But I really enjoyed this. I am looking forward to you even starting a podcast. I look forward to seeing you in the metaverse. And let's do this again sometime. Yes. Enjoy your dinner.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Awesome. You too.